Hi, and welcome to the Spark Awakens, an 8-part series that we're doing together with Urszula Kur. Ursula today is going to talk about some interesting topics, and we're going to just have conversation. Let's go over first what we talked about in episode 1, just as a quick review. And if you haven't watched it, go back and watch episode 1 because it might help with what we're going to talk about today. We talked about the left and the right brain in episode 1 and the difference between the two. We also talked about the mind and the ego and the spirit and the soul and the connections that they all have with each other and how they work together. We talked about our connections with our parents and what that looks like, as we go through life from birth to a certain age. We talked about the challenges that we're all facing at this time. And that's the reason why we're doing these series, is to help each other. It's just as much help for us as it is for you listening, because we learn a lot as well, and from each other and from the things that we're going through.
That's right.
And then we talked about breathing and how to breathe. And, if you haven't watched it, go watch the video and practice breathing, because we're going to talk about that again today, how important it is to pay attention to your body and what's going on, because we are so powerful that we can heal all kinds of things that are happening in our body. Where we're going today, we're going to talk about the voices, the stories that we tell ourselves, and the voices that we listen to, and the parts of us that may want to stay safe while our soul is whispering, it's time to move on. It's time to make some change. And we'll talk about, how do you tell the difference between your soul and your mind, and what does that look like? So that's where we're going. And we're going to give you an activity, something to work on today that, we kind of gave you breathing the other day. We'll give you another activity before we end today. But let's get started. Ursula, I just want to say, in the first episode, we talked about your experience, your left and your right brain, and how you're an engineer and you've got this ESP ability. Can you just kind of back up a little bit? And did you ever have anybody in your life ever say to you, like, you tell them, you have ESP, or you've been called a psychic, and they roll their eyes and they look at you like, oh man, or they go and they start whispering behind your back and saying, oh, like, we don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole, or, and for whatever reason, they just back up because of a belief system that they have, or something that they've been taught. Have you had that experience?
If you ask me if I didn't have, and I said I didn't, I would be like,
Right.
Of course, all my life I was called a witch, and then I was called good witch, and now they stop calling me a witch.
So now,
Yeah, well, that so-called ESP runs in my family on a female side. So my grandmother had it, my mom had it, but they never work on that. They never work with it. But my mother understood. Even from the time when I saw the Grim Reaper at 14, it was my grandmother who said, okay, he's gone. He's not going to take her. The old Polish saying, when the dead come to your feet, it takes you. When it comes to your head, it warns you. Well, luckily it came to my head at 14.
wow.
So because I had this semi support, I mean, it wasn't open. My mother was not talking to me, okay, you have this gift, and no, she didn't name it, she didn't label it. She understood the essence of it. So she would try to make me feel comfortable to whatever I do, whoever I am. And that I'm very grateful for, because if you have that rejection that close to people. So I had some, I didn't have a boyfriend until I was 21, but some of the people would not want to date me as soon as they found out that I had an ESP.
It's like, oh, I don't want her to know what I'm thinking.
So what was actually my little advice or direction or guidance was, well, I guess there are things that they are trying to hide, and they are correct. The only man that didn't want to hide anything and was excited when he found out that I had ESP was Michael, my husband. He was actually extra because he took some parapsychology courses when he was in university. So he's like an open book. He's like a big boy. So I knew he
He
was.
wasn't afraid of it.
No, no. And you know what? We shouldn't be afraid of it because it's a gift that came from God directly.
And the funny thing is, I've heard so many people say that we all have a gift of like that inside of us, and most of us just don't listen. And it's a different type of way of
Yeah.
of knowing things. It's a
That's-
way of knowing, isn't it?
Well, we
It's-
teach them to the children. Children see things.
They do.
Animals see unseeable. And yet we lock that internal eye, the connection. Children are innocent, they are connected, and they don't have a problem with it because they don't act through fear. But we do, and we put it on them. So we kind of close that door about age of 6. And then children are like, when I sometimes see programs that when there is a haunting, and a parent, when a child comes and it's scared and it says, Mom, there is a man in my room. It just boils my blood seeing that parent taking that poor scared child, leaving them in a room and walking away and telling them there is nothing. Because there is a lot. I had a man who was 54 who still slept with the light on. And so
fear.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when he was 2, 3, 4, it took probably around 4 years. He would cry, and his parents would kick him back to his room. And he says there was a monster in his closet. Well, when I took him under hypnosis and he went back to those times, there actually was a monster in his closet.
Mhm.
And there were actually activities going in the house like a poltergeist and strange things.
Like all these movies came from somewhere, right? They're not
Every
just
legend
totally,
has,
right?
no.
Every legend has something
Yeah.
in it. There's
Yeah.
some kind of a story in it that there is some truth in.
Yes.
And the one thing that I've realized is, some people say, no, I don't believe in that. Or I'm not, no, you're wrong. And lately I've really learned to suspend that whole I'm right about anything, because really, unless I was right there in that circumstance, right when it happened, I don't know what the truth is and what a lie is. And I think this is where we're at right now in society, is this whole understanding.
Yes.
We don't know all the answers. What we need to do is go within.
Be open.
Which brings me to my next question. When did you start to look within? And, what was your upbringing when it came to spiritual beliefs? Let's go there. What was your upbringing with that? And then what does that look like? What does it look like for you now?
Well, I was born, of course, I'm Polish. Poland is 90% Catholic. And that's where I was brought up. I was born into a Catholic family, and my parents were churchgoers every Sunday. But they lived also a life that the church, or not church, but religion in this way, was telling them, be kind, be honest, don't gossip. These were the values that I grew up with. Well, by about age of 11, because, in Poland at the time, they did not divide school, they did not connect education with religion. They never mixed the government and religion, which was a very smart thing to do. So we had the lessons, the religious lessons by the church. There was a building, but not in school. School was never teaching us any religion, just math and critical thinking.
Oh, right. But did they teach you that in school? Because they don't.
Yes, they did.
Oh,
Yes,
see,
they
I
did.
didn't learn that until I became an adult. I was a pretty old adult before I knew how to
No,
critically think.
actually, back where I went to school, yes, that's exactly what they taught us. Math, language, we had essays and Polish language and Russian language, and then eventually I had French language. Because every language is a door to another nation, to another
People
human.
that you can
Yeah,
connect.
that's right.
Right. Yeah.
And I was always attracted. I needed people because they brought me different energies. Even some could be not the good energies. That's how I learned to distinguish the good from the vibes that were not so good. Even as a child, look at the children now. You have a baby, and there is someone, and somebody wants to hand you that baby, and the baby is screaming. How do you think that is? Why a dog will be coming to a stranger and then letting to be pet, and then the other one they won't, they will be growling because their perception and what they see, and they are energetically connected to their environment before they start closing. And once you are told, no, 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 this is not, this is what we tell you, you feel, this is what we tell you, you do. That's what happens. So going back to my religious lessons, I question everything. I was kicked out from religion.
That's that engineer inside of you at a
That's
young
right.
age, right?
Because I would question. So, hey, why is that and not that? This is because we tell you so. And I could not take that as a face value. No, no, no. I need to understand. So they could call me a rebel. I was called rebel all my life. So by 11, when I had to go to Sunday mass, I would take the money that was for offering, for church, to a bunch of kids, and I would buy them ice cream, and we would go on a meadow, and we would have a great time. Of course, I was very creative, so I had to invent the what was preaching that time, was preached in church. So I was very good at that. And one time I was caught, of course, because I presented that there was a preaching about not lying to parents.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
And my error was that I didn't updated my information. And the priest that I said he was preaching about it was sick and waiting for surgery in hospital. But when I told my mom that, oh, he was good, he looked good to me, he was healthy, I guess he already had his stuff. And my mother, by accident, got a straight answer from the neighbor. I will never forget the punishment that I feared the most from my mom was the fact that she would look at me and she would turn away and walk away with no word. That was punishment. I'd rather have her smack me on the head, call me a liar. But my parents despised lying. They had unbreakable rules. There was no gray. You're gonna do this, and if you do this, then you're gonna take consequences. That's how I grew up. So my mom understanding some of the things because she was very creative, as I mentioned in a previous part. My dad was the engineering guy, fixing, and my mother never worried about those things. So they were like a yin and yang in a way. Sometimes hated each other for being perfectly who they were supposed to be. And probably that's what I put together. And my yin and yang sometimes would spin. So I don't want this gift. And God, make it go away.
So you had this whole thing going on with you've got the church and you've got the religion and you've got, that belief that you were taught and you did buy into some of it, of course, because some of it was wonderful and you liked that. But then the stuff that you didn't was probably conflicting with the piece of you that had the ESP. Is that what went on or what was going
Yes.
on there?
Well,
Okay.
there were some things that were aligned with me. Don't lie, don't steal. Those were 10 commandments. So I lived that way. But what I couldn't accept, and because I knew different, I felt different, was that I couldn't imagine Father, God, creating source that put me on this planet and it's just waiting for me to make mistakes so he can come and punish me. I could never embrace God like this. And so for me, whoever made me out of love. So there is nothing wrong with me. And gave me this the good stuff, the creative stuff, the joy, the laughter, the love of people.
That's why he's called the creator, right?
Yes.
Like some,
Yes.
indigenous people call him the creator.
Yeah, I
because
actually
he created us to be creators.
and interesting in Polish language, word God is not as often used as word stworzyciel, which stands for creator.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so there are differences in some of the things that I saw, and in the two different languages. And so for me, it was no, God loves me, and He's not going to punish me. He's going to teach me, and He's going to show me how. And maybe that was the reason why my mind, since when I was obviously born with open, that source of knowing open more than other people, because we all have it. We are all connected to the same source. That's
Directly connected.
absolutely
So that's that spirituality not for
for
sale.
sale. Exactly.
And why you named the book Not for Sale because
Because we have it, we don't have to buy it. We don't. You cannot sell spirituality. You don't buy spirituality. You just open it within yourself.
and once you open it, it's open
And you cannot close it.
No.
Once you do, open that door a little bit, and that light's coming from that little opening, it just becomes brighter and
So
brighter.
you believe in God.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
More than ever.
Me too. And I don't think it has anything to do with religion
No.
in so many ways. It's and not that I'm knocking religion. Honestly, I was the same. Brought up in church. I was so inquisitive. I went to all kinds of churches and I learned all kinds of things. But the one thing I did learn, and I have learned, is that we have a direct connection with God, and
Yeah.
He loves us with everything.
Absolutely.
And so that is a good learning, I think, for everyone to kind of get to, is that place of it's all within us and we have the answers. And
Yeah.
nobody can give us the answers, really, but we can connect with each other and learn from each other.
Absolutely.
And I learned so many things that are so interesting from you. So let's move on to talk about. Okay, so we talked about that direct connection, spirituality, and
Yeah.
the role that spirituality plays. Now let's talk about the ego. And
That little monster.
running the show.
Little monster.
Let's call it the ego running the show. Right. So the ego is running our show. What does that look like?
Well, I tell you how. I think the easiest way to distinguish ego from actually speech and speaking from the soul is this. Let's say, imagine that you had some conflict with somebody. You're coming home and you are sitting and you are angry and you are just chewing on it. And then the voice comes and, yeah, Lord, how did they do that to you? You did good. You're a good person. And look at how nasty they are. That's ego talking.
Ah,
When the spirit would talk, spirit would say, maybe you need to look up where it started and how you contributed to what happened, to the outcome. And then you'll, yeah, actually, if I didn't say this, then the rest would probably never come out. And that's how it's to me now it's very visual. But at the beginning, it was very subtle because you have to look at yourself. You're pointing this finger at someone. Look at how many fingers are pointing back at you. So if you're resenting something in someone, there is three different reasons for which it happens. And they are not out there, they are in here. So then we have to become humble and say, okay, I'll have to look into this house. I thought it was nice, clean house, but obviously there are things that, and then you start saying, okay, this is this habit of doing this. That was my dad. And I kind of absorbed it and used it because it served the ego. Now I see this not right. And through the retrospect, you see scenes flying through your head, even from your family life, from your interaction of your parents, and you see how bad things happen because of that very way of thinking or behaving. Because my dad had to be always right. And my mom, when she was right, but she couldn't prove it, then she would close up and there was the silence. The worst thing between in a family is that silence. I always tell people when I had some marriage counseling, I would say, talk, listen first, learn to listen, and then talk. That's when I say to people, if someone is doing something in relationship, speak up, sit down with them, don't be offensive, don't insult them, but ask what and why they are doing and tell them this is how it affects you. And then see if they correct that. So if they do, it means they didn't know that they were offending you. And we are all beings that are growing and learning from mistakes. But if they didn't and they continue doing it, I said, you have your answer. What do you think is going to change? Nothing is going to change because these people actually do it on purpose. So answer will serve itself and unfolds as you just look at the scene, step back and look at the scene. So do you want to be in this relation when this always occurs? And as the time goes, it always gets worse. It never gets better. Control. And that's, like I said, sometimes people say, well, I love her or I love him. It's not about love. It's about control.
Let's go to emotions and energy. Like, so the ego is that really strong voice in your head. And if you're having a discussion with someone, these difficult conversations, so we teach, how to have difficult conversations.
Yes.
Because you have to learn how to have a difficult conversation. That's a big one, right?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
It's not something we're born with because
and we are born with it.
We are born with it, but we forget. Because we
they,
see this chaos going on all the time,
yes.
which is most of us will see how people handle difficult conversations. And if you don't see adults acting like adults together, so you'll see an adult acting like a child or two children acting that are adults acting like children when they're having a conversation. And so it's difficult to as a person trying to learn how to be an adult and how to have adult conversation and how to get out of the ego, because I read so many books on ego and I couldn't really understand. Is it a separate entity? Is it something that's
the voice
me?
That is
It's taking over my body?
Sometimes it could be, but it's not. That's an additional ego.
Okay. And so that's a deeper subject. But if you look at the ego and the mind, there's many times that I have been totally guilty of this ego taking over my mind. And I am going to, I will get you and I'm going to win because, blah, blah. And I realize when I back up and I start thinking about it, my empathy kicks in and the love in me kicks in and the love for the person that I, care for that's there and I'm having this challenge with, I realized, wow, I got out of control. I really did allow my ego to take over. And you're right, it's stopping. So let's think about how do you stop? Let's go through this exercise of the thought process and the feelings and how they connect to this whole process of ego and taming that ego, because that's a big one for people. Because so many people are in chaos, right? And it's divide and conquer in so many ways right now and it's been for years, like my whole life, this war thing going on in a war country here and war torn here. And people are fighting and people don't even know why they're fighting with each other. They're just fighting.
Because they're fighting for a wrong reason.
Right. And whatever reason they're fighting. But we've been taught to have chaos in so many ways. And in our own mind, we have chaos going on. We have this battle between right and wrong. Should I do this? Should I not do this? I don't understand that. I understand that. And, you have all these social medias that are saying the opposite of everything else. And so it creates confusion. And then our ego kicks in and I'm right. I've got this. I know exactly. And we started with this today. It's like, do we really know? Do we really? And this is the critical thinking we talked about in the first episode. Do we really know? Have you asked enough questions? And when we say we are right and we know for sure that this is what it is, are we in ego? Are we stuck? Is that like, how do we know anything for sure?
Well, there's some things for sure. And once you do, and they are right things that you're standing for, you accept it. And then you have to tell people, this is what I needed to do because I care for you. But if you choose to do opposite, that I know it's going to hurt you, then you're taking responsibility for it. But I've done my right, my duty.
And that's always coming from that soft voice and sin. That
Yes.
soft voice we talked about.
That's right.
The one that you can hardly hear.
Yes.
Because sometimes the ego's screaming so loud that you can hardly hear your spirit and your soul speaking to you.
Yeah, one situation that I can actually probably put that as a very good example. One of the cases described in my book is the case of a client that was referred to me by other client, and she couldn't get any help from psychologists and psychiatrists and stuff, so she was basically stuck in a loophole. At the time, she when she made, usually I have a how do you call it, consultation to see if hypnotherapy is the correct way to go. Because not always. There are other ways that people can get healed and improved. But in her case, when I got, she said, I want hypnotherapy from the get-go. And right there, I'm thinking there is something off. You feel it. You don't think. So when I went to have the first appointment with her and was in her place back in Calgary, I missed the place 3 times. So you are missing how the signs are talking to you. But then she stood up and then I came in. There was a big dog, and that dog was very protective, as she explained to me later. But that dog was waiting by the door. It's like it was waiting for me. Never barked, and it was sat by my leg like it knew me somehow. That was, so many things that you can see it in a distance, and you start seeing the puzzle that it fits. Well, the first thing that I remembered, having this heavy heart, and I asked her if there is anything that she thinks she should or want to know. And I remember the suspension and that uneasy feeling in my stomach, praying that she says no. And that's what she did. She said no. She looked at me for a long time and just said no. So before we started the session, there was the shelf, and there was a big Webster encyclopedia leaning against the wall in front of Buddha little figurines she had. And as I am facing her, she's on a mattress where she was to be laying for the session. That big book was lifted from that shelf and thrown probably that far from my foot. No figurine moved. So it wasn't this flip, because it would have swiped everything in front. So that book was lifted and just thrown. Scared us, of course, because the sound and the whole event. And
I would have been out of the room already.
That's right.
Okay, I'm leaving.
That's right.
Enough with this.
So, when it was her choice, but I remember what happened in a short. She was murdered in that very house by her boyfriend, which in a way, by the time I was leaving, I passed him. And when he looked at me, it was a devil's eyes looking at me. And I didn't have too many cases like that.
In her
place, yeah. So they were renting the house together. He also had 2 children from his previous marriage. They didn't have any children.
So this happened after you'd had the session with her?
Well, yeah, when I was coming in, actually, to the first session, he passed me.
You felt something.
Oh, I felt every hair on my body and my head stood up. And when he looked at me, this is when you see vacant stare. There was no one home, but there was darkness. He was a good-looking man, but he had this darkness. So when I was leaving after the first session, she says, "What do you think about my boyfriend?" And my words, and I had a hard time even speaking. I said, all I can say, you are in a wrong relationship with the wrong man. It's up to you how fast you can get out. But please, I beg you, whatever you do, keep it to yourself. Do not tell anyone what your plans. And unfortunately, this is what she said, I am leaving you. That was the day.
She told him.
Yeah.
That day.
Yeah.
After you'd left.
No. I had a second session. And then 3 months later, her friend that recommended her called me and she said, Lynn is dead. And I just sat down. And that's when I thought, oh my God, I failed. I failed to protect her. I failed to save her. And it was my ex-husband at the time. He was a native man. He said, if God meant for her to be saved, she would have been. So that's when I had to understand that I can only help those who want to help themselves.
Because she said she didn't want,
Yeah.
you
And-
know, to
and-
know anything.
After it happened, I saw her spirit, and she came and she just asked me one question. What we did together, the work we did together, did it set me free? And I said, yes, it did. And that's, I guess, for her, there was evening out that so-called karmic death payment. But
for you, it was that whole, like, you felt the feeling
Yes.
when you walked in. So the whole point of that story was
yes,
you felt the feeling when you walked into the room,
yeah.
and you knew that you weren't going to be able to do anything. Probably you had that feeling.
But she was, you know what I did? I actually did. I accomplished what my job is to accomplish. I set her free. Her psychiatrist called me after all this. She said, what did you do to make what I couldn't make in 5 years? I couldn't make it happen. I would like to. I said, I will tell you.
So she was willing to leave,
Yeah.
but that's what got her into
Yeah.
trouble.
But what was the most, tragic, that he murdered his two daughters right after the same day, 13 and 9-year-old. And there was one room in, and that's when I really reinforced that feeling, the knowing. When she asked me to go to one of the bedrooms upstairs, I tried to cross the threshold and I couldn't. It was like a force pushed me out. She says, come in. I said, no, this is that room. Words came up. I don't know where these words came up, but that 13-year-old that was fighting for her life died in that room. So you know how.
So this happened all after, though.
Yes.
So you saw it before it happened. You saw everything going on, which is very, like, I could say a curse in some ways. For
Yeah.
me, it would be like that whole curse thing,
And-
which you said.
And for majority of my life, it was.
Yeah.
It was. But I was told, my guide told me, I'm not going to take it. You have it. Use it wisely so you can help others without hurting yourself. Because first readings that I had with people way back then, 40 or more years ago, would make me sometimes violently physically ill, would make me feel like I'm in depression when people walk out feeling good.
Right.
So I was absorbing.
So you had to learn to not do those.
How
You had
to-
a lot of learning around all of this.
Yes.
But let's go back to the emotion then. So we talked about how emotion can, the very first thing you want to pay attention to if you want to get out of chaos is to, be aware of what you're thinking and the emotions that are coming up. So why does that work for most people? Like, for me, sometimes I would not even think about what I'm thinking about. I would just have an emotion and it'd be like reaction, like, okay,
Yeah.
you made me mad. Like, I just want to go and be like,
What is causing our overload? All our senses, our visual, our audio. So the best and the first thing to cut off the immediate
Chaos.
input, close your eyes.
Okay.
And when you close your eyes, okay, I'm calm. And instead of responding, just shut that train right away. So, and that's when you can stop this, spiraling
Out of control. Yeah. That's so funny because sometimes intuitively, I think people will do that. They'll close their eyes. They don't realize they're doing it, but if you close your eyes, you stop the chaos.
That's right.
It usually will end.
Correct.
Now the audio is still coming in. You're still getting audio, but it'll slow things down.
But with time, actually, this very reflex of closing eyes will actually take you step by step, small ones, to the fact that you actually, even audio will go. You don't have to cover your ears, but it will slow down all the input and all these stimuli That's why when we meditate, unless you were really, really good, I can actually do meditation now with open eyes. But it's better when you close your eyes. What other places to go?
I love meditation and I love it
Within.
because I close my eyes.
Yes.
You know, I mean,
You go
yeah,
within
you
because
do.
there is nothing else.
Yeah.
So that's when you start. And sometimes I tell people when they get impatient, they said, "Oh, but I ask question and there is no answer." I said, because you were expecting the answers. Even if they would be shouted in your mind, you won't hear them. If they were shown to you, you won't see them. Just ask the question and let go. Have faith that that question will be answered. And the most amazing to me how it was like I would be at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. I would open my eyes and it was aha moment. That answer was there. And something wakes you up to actually say it. So maybe sometimes you go for a walk or you do cooking, all of a sudden, and it's that aha moment.
So
That's
many
that
people get
answer.
that inspiration, that voice, that soul spirit, that voice.
Yeah.
You get the inspiration when you're in the shower,
Yeah.
or when you're swimming and you're just like just going on your
Yeah.
back and looking at the sky, or you're walking, or
Yeah.
there's so many ways. Like
But
you
not
can,
when you are asking questions.
no,
It
and
happens a
when
very
you're in your head,
yes.
when your mind is spinning out of control and you're trying to find the answer,
Then you
the
want.
best way to find the answer is to stop.
Yeah.
Like just stop. And in the middle of a conflict, the best way to do that is
Yes.
to stop.
Go for a walk if you can.
The things that we learned in kindergarten, right?
Yeah.
Stop and think.
Yeah.
Stop and think. So it's like, if I'm going to stop, I'm not going to think. I'm going to stop and I'm just going to breathe. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah.
Because that is a technique.
Yes.
It's like, don't stop and think, because that's going to spin you out of
Stop
control.
anything and everything.
Because
Because
that
that thinking is what gets us in trouble.
It does.
So all you do is I'm suspending everything. I'm just learning how to be. Because we are so conditioned to do, to go, but you have to learn to be. And so why people are going from one bad relation impatiently and getting even worse one following? That's exactly because they are running, looking back and hitting the next wall. So when people are desperate of not being alone, they make the biggest mistakes because you have to be comfortable with yourself. And how do you learn about yourself? By looking in, by just saying, okay, I don't care. Everything's going to be okay. Everything always is. But this is the aspect of faith that so many churchgoers don't have. I mean, they are the biggest doubters. Like for me, one of the aspects of what I couldn't stand being going to church, and I often fainted in church when I was little. It was like the dread of dying in church was very, and I was born in church when in my past life. And so I would see women coming with the fur coats and, showing off, driving a Mercedes Benz, and there are other people who don't have food. And it was way around what 70s, 80s. Poland wasn't in a flying mode of, wealth and all that. And I'm thinking, why are you coming to church to show your forecoat or to show what car you're driving? And so I could see and observe because I have always this how you put pieces of puzzle in very easy way, and I see patterns. So I would see the woman leaning to next woman with this fancy and pointing discreetly on somebody who was wearing clothes that are looking ragged, gossiping. And I could not stand that. I said, you are not here that's why. So if I would step to church, it would be empty when there are no mass. Church was always open. So I would sit in the silence because, churches really were not churches. They were healing places. They were not prayer places. Look at the organs, look at the bells. Like we still have an old bell in the old church back in Poland. And at every midday, 12 noon, that bell would ring and the whole valley would vibrate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it was. Go to operas. Like we used to go to operas from school.
Mhm.
Operas is the voice that resonating with you. So I couldn't explain it, but I was always drawn to
You're
these
feeling
things.
it.
That's right.
And the feelings are so important.
Yeah,
And so if you have a thought and then you have a feeling
yeah.
and then you act on that feeling,
Emotion.
emotion,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You act on the emotion. Sometimes it's not good because your thought's not good, right?
But
Then you have a bad feeling.
yes.
So you see? So
What you do, that creates a feeling that saying this doesn't feel right. So you're wanting to do a business venture, and everything looks good. Everybody's bringing perfect. Okay, here is the money. Here's this, and yet there is this quieting emotion in you that no,
something's not
something is
right.
not right. So when you let that run, is that internal voice never lies. So that feeling tells you, no, I'm not doing it. Soon later, you find out whoever went for the business went bankrupt or something else happened. So now, often those little bits and pieces, you pick it up and say, yeah, it was right. So all of us, we have to rely on that feeling right here.
Mm.
You know, when you are born, your heart has its own brain. Heart is the number one organ, not brain, because some children can be born without brain and they still function.
Mm.
So your heart thinks, feels, and expresses. And that's when toroidal power from us comes, right from here, goes to your head and under your feet, the same like toroidal magnetic fields of Earth. So when we are aligned, we are in resonance with everything there is. So I say, instead of arguing, take yourself for a walk on
Walk.
a grass on a beach.
Put
Just
your foot,
ground yourself.
just ground yourself, like the grounding and earthing, which we'll talk about in
Yeah,
another video.
yeah.
But there's tons of ways, and we'll go over some of the ways in different ways. But let's just do a quick close your eyes.
Yeah.
So maybe show people how to just
Okay.
get out of chaos
Yeah.
like that.
If
Okay.
you are comfortable laying down, by all means, lay down. But the best way is to have your chakras aligned in a vertical position. And so, what connects chakras and meridians, the highways of energy?
And some people don't know what chakras are. So let's
Okay, chakras are energetic center of our that you can align when you're looking at the image of, let's say, human form. The number one chakra, which is a representation of red color, is at the base of your pubic bone or coccyx. The chakra number two is orange chakra, two fingers under your belly button, and it is vibrating and emitting orange. Then the chakra three is your stomach chakra, which is yellow, and then the love chakra is green. Sometimes people ask, what green? It doesn't matter. The image of green will come to you. Maybe light, maybe bright, maybe apple green, maybe dark green. It doesn't matter. Jade, for example, is good stone to wear for this chakra. Then you have the chakra that is actually this color, blue, the turquoise blue. It's your throat chakra, which is the fifth chakra. The sixth chakra is your third eye, is the knowing, and then purple. And purple is the highest color. It's a color of God, creation, divine. And so when these chakras are, they are each chakra responsible for different organs and different parts of your health. So, and different issues that you might have. So, number one chakra is your tribal chakra. It's your connection to your original tribe, which is your mother, father, brothers, sisters. So if there is any issue in that, then most women or men will develop ovarian problems, prostate problems, uteral problems, bladder problems. Then chakra two is the gut chakra. It's when we chew and process everything. So whether we are absorbing bad and good, and that's when everything settles. Chakra, this is a self-judgment chakra, when often we hold the fears in the stomach. When we go to the dentist, when does it collect? It's kind of here. So it's a yellow. So I tell people, if they have certain problems, wear that very color. Sometimes wear multicolor, like me.
Nice and bright.
So, and there are colors, let's say, for a to be well rooted. When you go to interview, business interview, job interview, put red. It vibrates in the right place when you stand and you are anchoring yourself. So yeah, I can do the job. So
Or orange. I like orange.
orange,
You know,
yes,
bright colors.
yeah, but
I mean,
red for a business is actually
they don't
red.
look good in red though.
Yes, you
No,
do.
kidding.
Yes, you do. You see, she's doing something that
Kidding.
we shouldn't be doing.
Kidding.
We should never ever say derogatory statements or talk ourselves down, because our bodies and our spirits are in tune and they hear it and they respond the same way. So instead of saying, well, I need to lose weight, all you have to say, well, I look good, but I'll be better, looking better and better. That's when you go, it's only
I'm
one
getting
way
healthier
up.
and healthier.
Exactly. So instead of rejecting yourself, you accept yourself, love yourself, and therefore you are motivated to do more, to love yourself even more. Because that's when we are here. We are learning love.
Oh, for
We
sure.
are all coming
Yeah.
into this life to learn to love unconditionally without feeling, oh,
Which
I
is
love you if you.
not easy.
Well,
Yeah.
but if it was easy,
We
then
wouldn't have come.
we wouldn't
Come here.
no.
We would have stayed where we were.
So,
Yeah.
so when you are, like I said, meridians are the little highways. So if there is a clock on a highway, it means the energy that is coming from divine, it's not passing through. So it's not reaching some of the chakras. So there is a stale energy, and then vibration goes down. When vibration goes down, that organ is getting sick. Because getting sick, it means something like taking a fast food, some really bad food. It's a very low vibration. If you are putting in your high vibrating body that low vibration, you are lowering your vibration. And it means you are getting
Like drugs and alcohol.
yes.
You're lowering your vibration.
Yeah.
Every time you take
That's right. So it is important that we align and we close our eyes.
Okay, so we're all going to do this, right?
Yes. When you are inhaling, inhale and pull the air until your diaphragm moves down and your tummy puffs up. And then when you are exhaling, you push slightly on your tummy and your air goes up and you inhale. You can use to inhale your mouth or your nose, whichever is more comfortable. But when you are inhaling and you feel that pull down, feel that you are pulling down the energy from your pineal gland down to your coccyx. And then when you are exhaling, you are pushing the same flow on the inside of your spine back to your pineal gland. It's one of the most potent and probably fastest way to calm you down and to actually help you invert in, and so that all the upset goes easy and it's not running your day. It's not destroying your day.
I think of it when I'm doing it, when I've got my eyes closed, I think of it like a circle.
Yes.
And it's
like when you look at the bottom side, then you see this.
Yeah, it's kind of like
Yeah. So
going
it's
in a
kind of
circle.
going around your spine. That's
Yeah,
right.
and
That's
it
right.
helps to calm, and it helps
Yeah.
me to count.
Yes.
You know, when I first got started
Yeah.
breathing, and I took some breathing courses because I knew breathing was really important. So I thought, well, I better learn how to breathe. At first, I thought, man, really, seriously, do we have to get back to learning how to breathe? I thought we were
Yeah.
born learning how to breathe, but we forget. And many adults are breathing just from this very shallow place up
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And when we start to breathe from here, man, you just feel it in your whole body when you feel that whole breathing process.
Yeah.
And so when I close my eyes and I'm breathing, I started with the whole counting 5, breathing out 8. And as I do that, I envision this circle going around
Yeah.
and around, you know. And the funny thing is, what I realized was that I stopped thinking. My brain
Yeah.
just shuts
Down.
off
Yeah.
because I'm so busy with breathing and paying attention to my diaphragm and making sure that I'm breathing deep enough and then the whole counting piece,
It
and then
takes
the
lots
whole,
of attention and
doesn't it?
focus.
It
Yes,
is
yes,
totally
yes.
thinking, like you're thinking. But what happens is all the chaos.
Stops.
Like the chaos usually is in our mind. Like in my mind, I know that
It's in
my
everybody's mind. Yeah.
right? And I'm causing more chaos in my mind than you could cause in my mind. Like no one's causing chaos in my
No.
mind. And this is where we all say, you made me mad.
No.
Well, actually,
You made yourself mad.
let's just stop here
Yeah.
for a minute.
Yeah.
No one makes you mad.
No.
And that's a hard
The
one.
same like no one can make you happy. Like I've seen so often, oh, if I didn't have my kids, I would be a singer. No, you wouldn't. You have an excuse for your laziness and passiveness. Because if you want to do something, nothing and no one can stop you.
Yeah, if you're
And so
passionate
that's a
about
blaming. That's a blame.
something,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
we always want to put it out externally on
Yeah.
someone else
Yeah.
instead of taking that internal responsibility, which is not easy because you're learning so many lessons and so many things that you know can go wrong, does go wrong sometimes, and then it's oh, another lesson. Like, you know, I did say at one point I was praying and I said, the lessons can stop now. I've had enough. What I learned was that, you know, lessons will keep coming. That's what we are here for. We're here to learn lessons. We're here to keep learning from each other. And, you know, we talked about a lot of different things today. So let's look at where are we going from here and what does that look like? So let's recap kind of
Yes.
what we talked about. We talked about spirituality and what that looks like, and that we are connected, all of us, divinely connected. We don't need external sources. We can pray and we get the answers and they will come to us. The best way to get them to come to us is to quiet that mind ego, and you know, and the ego is very loud, and we want to
Just one thing to add to ego.
okay.
What do you think drive religions to destroy or put down another religion? It's ego. My religion is better than yours. You are wrong. Our religion is right.
See, I've always
Spirit-
had kind of a problem
yes.
with that myself.
Spirituality unites.
That's it.
Religions divide.
I think we should all be uniting together.
Absolutely.
I mean, because they all have such good
Yes.
things to teach us.
Yes.
Like there isn't, like they all have good things in them.
Yeah.
And we should just all embrace each other. You can believe whatever you want, and I can believe whatever I want. And as long as it's good and it's loving and it's caring and it's peaceful and it's not teaching us how to fight
That's
with each
right.
other and divide each other, then why cannot we all believe in something different? Because my belief is we all go to the same place and we all will eventually get to the same place. Hopefully, better souls than we came, understanding more things, learning more lessons. And those lessons aren't easy.
No.
And
Think about spirituality, like religion. Like each religion is interpretation of spirituality.
okay.
And so that's when you see we are looking at a real thing. And everybody says, well, I see this blue, I see it yellow, somebody sees it green. But it is just their take, very, very, and that's ego that is driving that.
Right.
Because you don't tell yourself what you see, you just see it.
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
So things that I used to feel like, oh my gosh, it breaks your mind. Actually, through the growing spiritually, I can look at some passages from Bible and I actually understand them now.
Better.
Before, when I read it, what the heck is it, Chinese or was it?
Right.
What language is it
Was
in?
it there before?
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Yeah, and so you have no idea. It's like a foreign language. But now, when somebody says, John, whatever, 12:17, I didn't even know what 12:17 stood for. But I understand what that sentence is telling you. And it's telling you about spirituality, about your inners, your connection to God. That's what it is all about, always was. We will unite and we will come together as every person, every individual on this planet is a God's child.
and that's where we're going right now.
That's right.
Which
And
is the
it's
exciting part.
Yeah.
And I get excited about that. That's
Yeah.
where I know we are going. And this is the most exciting time to ever be on earth.
That's right.
Is this change is happening and we get to all embrace it together and we all get to learn together.
Yeah.
And this is, partly why we're doing this is so we can learn from you. We
That's
can
right.
learn what you have to say and the things that, you can
Absolutely.
teach us.
You have experiences that you might even look now from a different perspective and pass that forward. I say, when you learn something, you don't have to pay it back, pay it forward. And there is so many of us, we are all interconnected. So when we pass, we were connected, we came from a singular source, from God. So we are connected, whether we are aware of it or not.
Yes.
And this is the beauty. Like, to me, it's the most exciting.
And we get to help each other now.
That's right.
And
That's right.
and the internet gets us out,
Helps
to
us.
each other.
Yeah, that's right.
So now we're going to move on and the next episode we're going to talk about is how to heal what was never your fault and how to begin releasing inherited pain.
Yeah.
Like, release your pain.
Yeah.
That you inherited from somewhere else. So
in the releasing the programming.
Yeah, the programming. So we're going to talk about programming in the next one and other things. And we might digress. We do a little. But we like to have a little bit of fun too.
But I always say, if something doesn't come easy, it shouldn't come.
Yeah. Yeah.
So hopefully you have all a beautiful day.
Yeah.
And just, if there is something heavy, shed it off, close your eyes and say, it doesn't exist in my reality, because your reality is created by you.
Yes.
So if you're creating beautiful reality, I am creating. When we put it together, we are the real power.
We sure are. Right. Okay. And with that, we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.